What's going on, everybody? I'm Sage, and I was talking about in my previous videos that the next thing I want to go over is kind of like the Guardian shuffle that they've done, really, with the talents and kind of test it out. I did give my initial impressions of it, and I was starting to make another video of it, but then a very small change happened. But then I just kind of I'm like, you know what? Mythic Plus is coming out very soon. Let's just wait for it to come out, and then we'll test it out again. That way we have a little bit more concrete information and see how the main two builds I'll probably go over right now is going to feel. And then there's a little bit of speculation, and then we'll talk about like, is it actually even better than the previous iteration that we had? Let's just jump right into it really quickly. The main thing that you're going to notice is obviously the talents down here in the bottom right hand have changed pretty drastically. Same thing with the left hand side, a little bit less drastically. Up here at the top, not a whole lot has changed for our initial triangle at the beginning here. It's all the same exact stuff going all the way down. You have your option between brambles and bristling fir. Bristling fir was more of an option prior to how they actually reworked this, but you don't need rage at all with these builds now. So that's kind of a dead talent now, bristling fir anyway. Um, but past that, you're going to go over here, take innate resolve. It gives you that extra charge of friend's regeneration plus some increased healing. Your proc chance of thrash, earth and warden is very strong still too. You're going to take all of your enhancements on berserk, just like you normally would. And then on the left or the right hand side of the tree, this is where it kind of changed up a little bit, where they took survival of the fittest from right here. Where soliciting moonlight is currently, they moved it up here, and then they just kind of took the switch talent that was right here and place it over here. The bad part about this is that this was blocked, but these two talents right here aren't very strong. Like they're not super strong. Guardian Balloon could be pretty cool to play with just because you can enhance that frenzy regeneration, get you some bigger healing in. Um, and then after the wildfire is just passive burst healing for a group, but it's not like you're not going to track that 200 rage every time you try to heal, and it's not like a big enough heal to matter, especially with the 40% HP buff that the entire game just got, um, or players got. It's not a massive amount for 14, almost 15k right there for a heal every 200 rage. Um, but anyway, it's blocked behind Survival of the Fittest. Survival of the Fittest gives you a 30% DR if you put 2 points into it, which isn't horrible, and I actually kind of like preferred where it was in a sense, I guess. I do wish that it was up here, but like in a better location, I guess. And then these two right here, I still think are dead just because it's behind this 2 point talent, and you're not going to spend the 2 points here ever because of what's available here at the on the other side. Um, then one of the big things they did for us was Soul of the Forest and Blood Frenzy. It used to be a switch talent right here, and they spread them out, and then they placed Soul of the Forest up here. Obviously, they took all of the Moonfire abilities that are down here from right here and threw them right down there. Um, our layered main still the same. Reinforced fur still the same. They did take your socks endurance, and initially on this is one of the things that they changed from my initial video that I made, as I was making it. Obviously I didn't release that one, but as I was making it, this one right here, they reduced it from 2 points to 1 point, but then they only gave you rank 1 of it, which was still just trash. And now they upgraded it to where like 1 point gives you rank 2, but it's still just 2 seconds. Now it's only 1 point for 2 seconds increase on Barkskin and Iron Fur, which isn't super horrible, but like if you still compare it to like the other talents, like point consumption, it's just not. There's not a massive amount of value there. So this, in my opinion, is still something you're just going to ignore. It's a little bit better for 1 point now, but not by a lot, right? 2 seconds. It's literally just 2 seconds. Um, and then infected wounds still dead talent. Front of the pack still dead talent. They did give you some additional connectors here, like you can go into survival instincts, improve survival instincts, and down to your socks endurance. Same thing over here, infected wounds down. Well, actually, I think you could do that previously. I'm not sure. But infected wounds going down and then down again into tooth and claw. Like you can go straight down instead of having to always go through this little like triangle thing. But these aren't the best connector nodes. And like I said, dead talent. So you're never going to take that. Never going to take this. Even if you could, you could have went down this way to get to the center. You just wouldn't. Um, Anyway, going back over here, Soul of the Force is strong. Like Mangle is very strong for us, especially with our set bonus, getting the bloody healing that you get from your set bonus, as well as Mangle just generally is a button that you're always going to press on cooldown. Now we get it with more of our Gore procs, and your Gore procs are going to heal you and do some AOE damage as well. So using your Mangle on cooldown and every time it procs up, very important to bear. So this just kind of increases all of that, gives you more rage, and deals 25% more damage. And then on some of those, like, there's few dungeons that there's not a lot of trash in, that Mangle will actually end up going ahead on your rage regeneration from your other abilities. Then we trickle on down here. Like this build right here is definitely more of a consistent damage and healing, like self-sustaining healing set, I would say, like continuous self-sustain and continuous healing set, because you can only heal up to obviously your maximum HP. There is no shields involved in this one like you would with the next build that we talked about with your Sox Fury. You're getting healing from this Loon's Favored, where you're getting 30% of all arcane damage done refunded back to you as healing. And that plays in huge with being able to have Moonfire hit 2 different targets, which are Twin Moonfire here, having that Twin Moonfire giving you 4% DR across pretty much the entire group, and then Galactic Guardian just giving you a ton of damage. It's completely passive, like you don't even actually have to press it, because when your Galactic Guardian procs, it'll shoot out 2 Moonfires, and then the next time your Galactic Guardian procs, it'll use its own proc that you already had to give you the 300% increased damage as well as the rage, and then it'll also once again place it on 2 more targets. So like if you didn't want to press Moonfire after like the first initial pull, like if you pull a pack, you set up Moonfires across it, make sure you taunt when you pull in a pack, because if you don't have the pack engaged in combat, the twin moon effect won't work. It'll just moonfire 1 target instead of 2. So you taunt, moonfire hits 2 targets. Maybe you swap over to the other 2. It is smart casting, so if you swap to one that doesn't have it and you press it, it's gonna put moonfire on the 2 more that don't have it. So like you do that, and then once they're in the pack, like you don't ever have to press Moonfire after that, pretty much, because Galactic Guardian will start taking over from just your regular abilities, ticking and doing damage, which are just gonna proc it after proc. Which is good, because like you get into things where you're in Inkar and you're just sitting there thrash spamming still, or you're thrash spamming into mangle spamming, so you get some of that, depending on how many targets you have, type damage build. The only, like, not the only, but like the main, and this is where it all connects, right? This is where it's like, is it a buff or is it not a buff? And the only reason why the majority of people are saying like, okay, it is a buff to the way that they move the talents, is because since they pushed all of these valuable talents that we're going to take pretty much, or you're going to want to take anyway most of the time, is because of Blood Frenzy. Blood Frenzy is something we used to have. We've always had it, and it just made the rest of the talent road pretty much dead in the past. But Blood Frenzy Thrash also generates 2 rage each time it deals damage. This gives you so much rage regeneration. Like, it is your highest rage regeneration by far. The only time, like I said, that this ever isn't your highest rage generation is like if if you're in a low key and ads are dying super fast and you're in a dungeon that doesn't have a lot, like Temple currently like doesn't have a lot of trash in it. So like if there's not a lot of trash and your thrash isn't going off of several targets, then maybe your Mangle with all of its enhancements through Soul of the Forest and so on, and your how many gore procs and so on you get. But Blood Frenzy, especially in like the big dungeons, big pack pulls, Ruby Life Pool, you know, uh, Halls of Valor, so on and so forth. Like, this will be your largest rage regeneration by a lot, and this is what makes Guardian feel like Guardian in Inkar, is that you have an absorbent amount of rage that you can just spam out, 17 plus Iron Furs, or you can continuously spam out your Frenzy Regeneration whenever you want inside Inkar, because you just have the energy and the rage to do it, or not energy but rage to do it. So this Blood Frenzy is pretty much the only reason why this is like, okay, this is pretty good, because of what they've done here. Which, like, if they just moved this up from the previous build, it would have been great, because if they move this up here somewhere, like even if they put it where front of the pack is, if they put Blood Frenzy up here where front of the pack is, you could take that, and in the previous build, before this one, you could have Loon's Favored all of the Moonfire stuff, which was up here, and still get UFR. And like that would have been a really good build, a really strong build. You know, obviously not the most exciting build, still kind of boring. As far as like what you're going to be pressing in bear. However, it would have been very strong because you'd have the constant healing, you'd have an absorption shield, you'd have a whole bunch of rage, and you had Moonfires going off all over the damn place, which Moonfire is your highest damage the majority of the time with this build specifically. Um, so like Blood Frenzy is your main win inside what they've done here, and it's mainly if you come over here and you play the Moonfire build. Um, the other thing is like the way that they did with points and like what you don't have to take any of this over here, which kind of gave you another point up here at the top, and that's why I have improved survival instincts. In the previous build, I didn't run improved survival instincts because you wanted to get all of the Moonfire damage over here on the side, and then you were forced to actually take some of these abilities coming down here because you had to get to the center, right? Um, but anyway, you're going to want Circle Life and Death with this because it's a dot build. You know, it's a full dot build, as well as Frenzy. Blood Frenzy is off of every time Thrash deals damage, so this is just going to make Thrash tick a lot more often, so which is going to just give you more rage, right? As well as your dot tank. So Circle Life and Death should just always be a given, pretty much. Um, but back up here to the top, like if you didn't want to take improved survival instincts, the only thing I would say to take is actually over here, vicious cycle, if you wanted a little bit more single target damage. And this would solely just be where you're using mangle on cooldown like you normally would on its procs, or you know, trying to anytime that it does proc up or just on cooldown. And then once it hits the 3, you know, and you're sitting healthy, because obviously you want to make sure you don't need Iron Fur or Frenzy. But if you're sitting healthy and after you've used 3 mangles, you can use them all. And Maul got buffed up by 40%, so you could opt to not have the second charge of Survival Instincts to have a little bit more single target. Trying to actually get the single target talents down here, I don't think you're ever inside Mythic Plus, obviously. I don't think you're ever going to actually actively try to get like all of these, because your single target is not going to be massively improved. Like if you were to do like 10k plus more single target by selecting these, sure, right? Like maybe, but you're not. You're not even going to get close to that. Like these talents aren't that strong in single target, so the value is just isn't there. If you want to take a little bit of your defensive off just to get the little assist inside a single target, go for it. If you actually ever want to press Maul as a tank, because like Shadowlands and pretty much prior to Shadowlands, you just never press this button. There was never a reason to press this button. But you could, and there is inside my previous videos I went over Bear, is that you know, berserking, you could push that in there as well. Like you have the ability to push inside your malls, but like it's not, you're generating a lot of rage, and you could spin some with maul, but it's just not going to be as well as just like having Iron Fur attached to your Thrash. There will be a build where down here with your Sox Fury, and I'll go over that in just a second. But you could use Maul in that build as well, especially in Berserk. But ultimately, this is the build that I tested, and it feels pretty decent. Uh, a lot of it is just making sure that you're moonfiring on, you know, trying to get your moonfire spread across, and then thrashing your mind out. Pretty much is what it comes out to. The CDR from Yursok's guidance, because we have Blood Frenzy now. The CDR from Yursok's guidance is massive. Like if you're in a full, like a really big chunky pack, and you were able to just continuously go ham at it, you can actually get in card down to like a minute 30. I've heard people getting it a little bit less than that, but like about a minute 30, and then to 2 minutes is typically where most people end up falling, because it's not only decreasing it the whole time you're inside, you're using Inkar, which you're going to get so much rage with all your abilities, with Blood Frenzy specifically, but you're going to get so much rage. And then even outside of Inkar, you're still reducing it every single time you use rage, which is just huge. You're getting a ton of rage all of the time with Blood Frenzy, with your Mangle, with, you know, Soul of the Forest, and so on. And then you're just constantly getting your Incarnation back, and Incarnation feels more like Incarnation now just because you have Blood Frenzy. So very, very strong. I would definitely 100% take this inside this build. I would take it with pretty much every build right now. It's going to be hard to say like, hey, you know what? Don't take the CDR on you know incarnation because of this talent or something. You would have to drastically, drastically improve the build in order for you not to take the guidance for the reduced CDR. Convoke is just dead. Like it wasn't a good spell technically with Bear in the past because of its RNG. Like you didn't know if it was going to throw heals out. You didn't know if it was going to give you Iron Fur stacks, so on and so forth. So it's just never a thing right now. Um, this would be a very niche thing to play with ever, and like right now, it's like okay, if you're off tanking, maybe you take it, possibly. In raid, I would say that way you can like boomy weave or feral weave. Probably feral weave since on our druid side of the tree we're already taking some of the, you know, increased physical damage stuff on that side. Um, but anyway, uh, this is the first build. It's decent. I think the only bonus we gain is the Blood Frenzy, really. Obviously, like I said, we get the one more tick into this. The other build, and you have Rage of the Sleeper, so you have a little bit more tankiness with it. I'm not the biggest fan of Rage of the Sleeper because I think it's more of like a nerf down Barkskin almost, because Barkskin gives you more than this, especially with the talents that you take over on your bear side, plus Reinforced Fur gives you increased damage reduction from Barkskin, as well as Brambles gives you damage reflection from Barkskin, which is pretty much all this does. But it's on a 1 minute cooldown, and this one's on a 1.5 minute cooldown. But it does give you another, defensive button to press if you need it, right? Anyway, second build. So if we take off this, you're going to take off your Rage of the Sleeper, take off Galactic Guardian, and Twin Moons. You can't take off Soliciting Moonlight because you still want Blood Frenzy, but we're going to come over here and get our 2, so you have a reduced Frenzy Regeneration, get our Yursok's Fury, um, and then you're actually going to come over here since we took off the Moonfire. You're not going to have a ton of Moonfires out all the time because now you're hard casting it, right? You're not getting the free procs of it. It's not hitting 2 targets at a time, so you're not getting as much from this. So you're actually going to take off the Elun's Favored, and then you can come down here and get Untamed Savagery. Now this build, it's preemptive, it's not reactive. So the other build, the one that I just showed you, is reactive because you're getting healing, an inflow of healing coming into you from Elun's Favored, as well as you're getting healing from your Mangled from your 4 set with Bloody Healing. This one is, proactive, so like you're actually getting that shield like we did in Shadowlands with Yursok's Fury. Yursok's Fury has obviously been nerfed from 75% to 30%, but it's still a very large, like especially inside those in-car windows, you can still get it to where you're very close to invincible. Now, Frenzy Regeneration is definitely something you're going to press in this build significantly more than the previous one because you don't have that constant flow of healing coming in, but you do get it reduced. It is empowered, and then you get a ton of this shield because you're having Circle Life and Death, you're having Untamed Savagery, and all of that is increasing the damage, the radius, and the tick speed of all your thrash damage, and then all of that is getting funneled into a shield for you continuously, right? And then having a Bloody Frenzy or Blood Frenzy is giving you all of that additional rage, so you just constantly have all this rage, and then you're able to continuously have a shield. This is very highly reliant on staying in in-car as much as humanly possible. And then outside of in-car, that's when you want to like, okay, I need to make sure I'm remaining defensive here, or we do like a small break pull. Because with the CDR that you have on this, like I said, it's going to be about a minute and a half, maybe closer to 2 minutes, depending on how you're pulling anyway and how fast things are dying. Because if you pop in-car and the pack dies in like 15 seconds, and you definitely should not have pressed in-car there. Um, but ultimately, that's where it comes out. If you're going to do consistent big bear pulls and you want to have very good tankiness and you have a decent healer with you, or you have a healer that can throw out like kind of like passive healing, like a Resto Druid, if they just throwing hots on you and they don't have to actively keep pressing regrowth, that's good for this build because it's actively like you have a shield on all of the time, and then their heals just top you up a little bit if you need it, right? So they'll just heal your actual HP, and then your shield will just go beyond your HP. Versus the previous build, you could only heal yourself up to your HP, and there was no thing that like you could build up after that for tankiness or defensive. So like that would just counteract with a healer because you're healing yourself, and if a healer heals you all the way to full, then it just negates all of the healing you could have done from this ability. But it kind of just depends on like how you want to play it. Ultimately, I would say that if you have a good healer, then this is actually theoretically better because you can put a shield on and take more damage. You can absorb more. It's giving you a shield beyond your HP, so you can actually soak more than you could if you just have like a healing build, which is what the previous build was. But this is once again highly reliant on staying inside Inkar. Um, and this is ultimately the two builds that come into play when you swap things around. At least from what I've tested and what I've messed around with, I think it would be interesting to be able to like move things around a little bit more. Previously, we didn't have Blood Frenzy because it was stuck down here behind Survival of the Fittest, so we didn't play it either. So you could not play it, but because of the fact it's so much rage for both of these builds, and this build is reliant on Thrash, and this is from generated rage from Thrash, it seems silly not to take it. But if you weren't to take any of this stuff, or if you weren't to take Blood Frenzy, you could take Galactic Guardian and still get that kind of damage out because it kind of feels like you're wasting some of these talents, especially soliciting Moonlight. That's 2 points, and then your Fury of Nature is 2 points, and this is arcane damage increased by 20%, and this is just a DR constantly, right? Um, but you don't have a choice but to take this. Like that's just one of the additional problems with Bear is that you're forced to take arcane damage, but what happens if you don't want to take all the Moonfire abilities? Then you're forced to have increased 20 damage on arcane damage, have 4% DR from Moonfires, but then you're not going into that, and this is where it's just poor design, and how they've fixed this or tried to rearrange it. I think Bear needs a significant more adjusting. If they had some better connector nodes, maybe down to these two, um, even if they just rearranged the whole bottom again, because there are cool things inside the tree that we just don't get to play with. And one of them I've talked about previously is Dream of Sarnarius. Having your non-periodic damage have a chance equal to your crit to cause your next regrowth to be instant, free, and castable in all forms. Sure, Bear's not exactly stacking crit, even though crit for bears is a dodge, right? We get 100% of our crit as dodge, but that's never been a thing that bears have gone into too drastically, at least in recent expansions. Like the last time was like, I don't know, 4 expansions ago where that was ever like something you actively tried to go for was dodge. Maybe 5 expansions ago at this point. But if you have some crit, then periodically you'd be able to get a free heal that you could throw on yourself or throw on the party. You are hitting a lot of targets all of the time, so you could just be generating those crits off of your Thrash, especially in in-car windows, and then having those free regrows, which is definitely cool. I think that's a really good thing. I think that plays into hybrid bear very well because it would be one of the only tanks that can sit there and like, I'll just chuck out heals at everybody. I'll just throw hots across the group, you know. I'll assist the healer because there are tanks that can do this, but they have to sacrifice um, their generators. Like paladins can, but they have to sacrifice their holy power. Monks can, but they have to channel it, I think, or it's just like a small amount with the expel or something like that is what I want to say. But there's nobody that can just like, hey, let me just chuck this out and like I play obviously I'm main feral, and so this is kind of goes to predatory swiftness where we just every 5 combo points we get a free regrowth that we can put on anybody, including ourselves, and this kind of just gives bear that inside their talents. I would love to be able to play this and mess around with it, but because of our talent uh, points that we have at the bottom of the tree, it doesn't compete. This is not. This is inside an area where it should not be. Is in my opinion, this should definitely be up here somewhere, at least middle of the tree, because of what it's competing against. If I'm being super honest. As well as still things like layered main, that should be 1 point. It's 10%. 100% should just be 1 point. There's no reason for that. And then connector nodes need to change around. So this is ultimately the second build that I would play as bear. This is one of the ones I've tested as bear. This one felt definitely a little bit clunkier, just because like you had moments where you weren't in car, where you didn't have a whole lot, and like the next pull up, the group wanted to pull something massive, um, and you didn't have in car, and then you don't really have anything else to rely on because you're gonna have thrash, but it's gonna be on its regular cooldown depending on your haste, and so on and so forth. So this one, like I said, is reliant on in-car. The other one, not as reliant on in-car, but it doesn't give you any kind of absorption. It just gives you healing, which is fine. You can play with just the healing one. Um, and then there are some like speculation ones where like if you were to drop the CDR and go into like Galactic Guardian, then here you have a reason to have both these points now, both of these, and then you also have a reason to, uh, you know, have your not a reason, but you have your absorption shield. So you have your absorption shield, you have your rage regeneration, and you have Galactic Guardian, giving these points, these values, actual points, and then Circle Life and Death plays into both of these. So like that is a build that you can play, but losing the CDR reduction right now feels horrible. Um, so keep that in mind when you are doing this, as well as Galactic Guardian's not going to hit two targets, only going to hit one, but it's significantly better than not pressing that button, because you find yourself often with this build trying to play into in-car as much as humanly possible, and you're just sitting there thrashing, or you're using your mangle procs and swiping to make sure that you're keeping aggro and everything. But this will just generate you some additional rage, as well as just proc it on its own and press it, press it out there even more. That way, when you don't have any procs and you aren't inside in car, you at least get a little bit more sustained. So this might be a middle ground between the two builds: is take off your CDR, but I would say honestly, the CDR is probably going to be our biggest win out of this entire tree. Uh, from like a new perspective, right? Because we didn't have a reduced CDR in the past. For in car, it was just we were 3 minutes unless you used a legendary that reduced it slightly, but we don't have those anymore. Now we have the reduction on in car, so keep that in mind. Obviously a lot of things to keep in mind, right? But that's ultimately my impressions of it. Is bear is still very, 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 very far from where most of us want it. There's a lot of cool abilities. There's a lot of things that it could synergize with. There's a lot more ideas I think that they could place inside Bear. There's just more abilities that we've had in the past that they could even bring back and reiterate or change up, or something like people were talking about Lacerate, and I don't remember the last time I actually thought about Lacerate, but like even if they just brought that spell back and then changed up a little bit, maybe made a snap aggro ability, a little AoE snap aggro ability, something in that range. Like that'd be really, really cool. Um, and then if they gave us like a snap aggro with lacerate, which is its own different type of bleed, instead of it, compounding with thrash or moonfire or anything, make its own separate kind of bleed. Um, then giving us like Dream of the Cenarius and moving that up, then we'd have two different kinds of bleed: snap aggro bleed, consistent thrash bleed, moonfire bleeds, and then you'd have Dream of Cenarius where you could throw heals on your party member and assist with the healing of everybody else other than just healing yourself on top of it. Like there are some cool things that Bear could do, especially leaning on their hybrid capabilities. With the other druid forms, like they could take things that Bear could do from their other forms and give it into Bear a little bit more, stuff like that. And they just it doesn't seem like they've tried to change it enough. There's like you could slightly use this one ability you have a little bit different, um, like Maul. They're trying to push the Maul agenda like a lot, and it's just not happening because it's a rage spender, and that's its problem. It's a single target rage spender, which is its ultimate problem. Doesn't matter if you buff it, by 100% at this point, even after they buffed it by 40%. Like, it's not going to save single target bear. We need something additional to assist with it. Um, and we could that'd be awesome, and it would be really cool if it did that. One of the cool things I kind of wished, going into Dragonflight, that I kind of thought that it would be really cool if they brought it in, especially when I saw that they were bringing a Moonfire build into Guardian, was not only the Galactic Guardian but also Boomies have it, and that was I think it's called Orbiter for them, where like your 20th tick of moonfire would call down a full moon. I thought that would be really cool, and like not only would that be good single target, but good AoE damage as well. And I thought that would be neat because it was really cool to play with that inside Torghast. Obviously, at this point, with the way Galactic Guardian and stuff works in our build, it kind of be passive as well, so it's not going to add any additional fun except for like, oh hey, look, there's a gigantic moon. Let me chuck this down. Um, so you know. But I thought that that would have been neat in a sense, since we are going with the the laser beam bear. Um, but those are my thoughts. Uh, can bear? One of the questions I get asked a lot is, can bear? Will bear be able to like tank the like 20 plus keys? And it's like absolutely. Bear is going to be perfectly fine tanking 20 plus keys. Will it be easier than other tanks to do? No. I think the other tanks have better kits, better synergies, just more things inside their total toolkit that will allow them have a little bit easier time doing it, but like not by a massive percentage, right? Unless they're like protection warrior currently, I think. Um, but Bear will 100% be able to tank all of that content. I don't think it's going to be. It's definitely not going to be the top tank, your top mythic plus tank. I don't think it's probably going to be the top raid tank either. So, you know, but it will be able to do the content. It's just not going to be able to do it as easy as the rest of the tanks. Is ultimately what comes out to. I still think that the Guardian is sitting at the bottom of that list. Um, but we're talking about like the bottom of a list that's still fine, right? The entire list is doing good, but there has to be somebody at that bottom, you know, pretty much what it comes out to. Bear design, I definitely think it's going to get changed again. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets iterated on again. Maybe they'll even move something around before we get to the actual launch of the game, which would be kind of cool. But we are getting pretty dang close here. You know, we're only a couple weeks out now from launch, so unlikely that we'll get a massive amount of changes, but who knows? They might have something down the pipeline right now. Just say, hey, you know what? We switch these around. We're like, we can switch a little bit more. We can add a few more connectors here and there. Um, I doubt that they're going to add any new abilities right now, and that's going to have to be something we'll wait for, a point 0.5 patch when they just try to actually fix some of the other specs that they haven't fully fixed or functioned or any of that kind of stuff. But past that, thank you guys for checking out the video. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about Bear and its current changes and iterations that they've done to us. And do you think that this was actually a buff over the previous builds, or is it just because we, have access to Blood Frenzy now without like killing points to get into Blood Frenzy? Is ultimately what it comes out to. Like, I think Blood Frenzy is the only real good thing about this whole tree. Ultimately, um, some of the defensive is nice, but let me know. What do you guys think is the actual like super gain from this other than Blood Frenzy, I would say? And do you think that the other builds could have been better with a different type of iteration? Past that, I am trying to stream a little bit more often, especially on the weekends where there's Mythic Plus. I've been streaming the past couple days, a couple hours, super late at night or early morning Pacific time, I guess you could say. So if you guys want to come check me out there, that's going to be Twitch or yeah, twitch.tv/sageshifter. And you know, we can take a look at this and see if there's anything else we can iterate and change upon. And past that, thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.